Welcome to North Dakota After Dark. I am very proud to announce that we have checked both boxes and that we are in North Dakota and it is after dark. And we'd like to welcome everyone to episode 23. It's official, featuring Josh Brown. Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This should be entertaining for some people? Question mark?
Right, yeah, right. Excellent question mark.
We're here.
That's a very popular. The question mark gets a lot of use around here. So we've been trying with limited success to get a hockey official on for a while. So now we've fulfilled that. I appreciate your background, so it really sells it. We don't need to use subtitles. People know that you are the official. And again, excited to have you on and talk a little bit about some of your experiences. And as I said before, really just let Corey grill you while Kelly and I watch.
Well, and I really wanted to make sure that I set my phone up correctly so that you can actually see the official's jersey behind my back.
Yeah.
That's hanging on the wall.
Right.
So
that's perfect product placement, I'd say.
So with all these backgrounds of baseball jerseys, hockey jerseys, and reffing jerseys, do I need to get my high school football jersey, put it into a frame, and then bring my 1994 state Class B 9-man championship ring out just so I can be with the crew?
It wouldn't
only if that football jersey has a bunch of blood stains on it.
Actually, one of them does. But that's because you know me, Josh.
That's nothing.
Yeah. Not a big deal. Class B 9-man, still a thing.
Well, apparently Class B basketball has been a big thing. At least it was in the Moms podcast. So
yeah. So I guess to tease that out, we're hoping as long as her representatives get back to us to have Jess Gowan on for a solo episode, just so we can do a deeper dive into what Jess has to say about Class B sports.
I would love that because I loved her. She's fantastic. The fact she wore the helmet the whole podcast,
the whole time.
Yeah.
That told me right there she's a person I liked. Yeah. I didn't need to know anything else.
But it actually sounded like from the podcast. So most of the podcast I was just listening because I was taking the dog for the walk in the morning and I couldn't see what was happening. But it sounds like she actually wore that helmet just in general all the time while she was driving down the streets. And
yeah.
Yep. You can't ever be too safe. Yeah.
Well, right. As she described it as a multi-purpose sport helmet. So she was using it as intended. So
she was being safe.
Right. As Corey likes to say, safety third, right?
Yep. or sometimes not at all.
Perfect. Before we get too deep into this, what's everybody drinking?
High noon.
So I just got a regular old Coors latte.
Hey, that's okay.
This is I brought back an old favorite. This is the 12-year Bushmills. It's fantastic.
I've got I'm gonna try and I'd like this just to be known as the Corey. It's the Fresca and whiskey.
It's delicious, Kyle. You're gonna be an addict, I told you.
Yeah.
I am going to get Matt to try this because it screams something he would like. It has that vibe.
Yeah. Doesn't it kind of scream like you like whiskey, but you also like wearing ladies' shoes?
Yeah. That's a really good way to put that. So that's why I think.
Yeah.
That's a perfect drink for him. Yeah.
Later in the segment, I will, once I'm through this whiskey, I will be trying. Kyle dropped off a new beer for me. It's called Yup Light. It's from Canada. I can't believe this would be any good.
Try it. I think Matt liked his.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So we can have a compare and contrast episode here too. So since Corey apparently has no questions for you, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about what you do in hockey vis-a-vis the officialdom?
Well, so I'm actually done officiating, which everybody probably appreciates, to be honest. But no, I mean, I started reffing when I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
And somehow figured out very early on, which was probably somehow smart, even though I'm not the smartest guy in the world, that was probably my best career path on the ice, because the player side was I knew what to do, but the execution wasn't always there. But really my reffing career took off once I got to college. Went to school down in Mankato and met up with some of the guys down there as I started roughing that first fall. And they talked about all the different opportunities that are actually available within officiating and all that kind of stuff. So went from, I went to college down there in 2002 and started reffing right away. And my inauguration into reffing once I left Grand Forks was I went to so with officiating, when you're officiating kids hockey, you have to go in and do a retest and go to seminars and reskate and do all that stuff every year. They've actually made some adjustments to that the last handful of years, which is really good for the people that are still doing it. So I went in and I did all that stuff. So I'd been, officiating for, 8 years or so by the time that I went down there. Went to the seminar, connected obviously with the guys that were instructing the seminar. And after that day and a half of officiating, seminaring, and taking tests and doing all that kind of stuff, the top guys kind of said, "Hey, you look like you know what you're doing. You're new here. Let's see if you really know what you're doing." So my introduction to Southern Minnesota officiating was go to the seminar, be there. The guys go, "Okay, how about you come with us to Gustavus and work the black and gold game," which was their inter squad scrimmage game in, what would that have been? Probably September or October or whatever before their season started. And so it was the two guys. One of the guys was the president of the association. Another guy was been there for a long time. And they're like, "Hey, you come with us. We're going to rough and you're going to line for us. We'll see if you really know what the heck you're doing," kind of deal. And so during that game, they initiated me, is maybe the best way to say it, by one of the teams was shorthanded and they decided to ice the puck. And the referee, one of the referees, I can't remember if it was Ethan or Mike, that was standing basically 20 feet in front of me. So I couldn't see the guy taking a slap shot to ice the puck down the ice. And the referee moved out of the way and I took it right in the ribs.
Oh.
I'm like, okay,
Good
that
start.
kind of hurt.
Yeah.
So, but after that, we got in the locker room. They apologized, I think, while laughing at the same time, and went, "Okay, this kid knows what he's doing to a certain extent," and it kind of just took off from there. So
is that considered free hazing? Did it go that far?
It's probably hazing, but I mean, in the officiating community, I could go in a really dark hole, but I'm not going to go there. Well, we can get to that dark hole a little bit later, but okay. But basically it was, okay, the kid knows what he's doing. We can actually put this kid on games and teach him a few things and let him kind of run, kind of deal. And so it was really great, because honestly, I really didn't know what the opportunities of officiating were prior to going down there. And they talked about, there's all these camps that you can go to. So Minnesota has a officiating camp in the summer that they do up at St. Cloud. And then there's regional camps that you can go to, where it's basically the whole western side of the country that all meet up at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, to go to this officiating camp. And they have higher officials watching you and evaluating you and doing all those things. And then after that, if you do good enough, you can go on to a national camp, which is out in New York, and that's the whole country. And you kind of put all these guys in a pot kind of deal. So I was fortunate enough to do well enough to go from them not thinking that I knew what the hell I was doing to, within a couple of years, I went to regional camp up in Sault Ste. Marie, got to work the championship game, which is all kind of merit-based throughout the week. You're there for 5 days, and the top guys work the championship game. So I got to work the championship game. And then subsequently the next year, I got to go to national camp out in Rochester, New York, and went there. And when we're out in New York, it's all NHL guys that are the evaluators. So those are NHL referees and linesmen that are out there watching you do what you do. And funny enough, it was actually the year that would have been probably like 2007, I think. And it was the year they tried to start to incorporate, hey, can we do some of these other rules? So when they have these camps, so like the New York one was all the top under 18 players in the country. They all go to Rochester, New York, play in a tournament. We officiate it. We get evaluated. The players are getting evaluated to try to make these top teams. And they go, okay, so here's what we're thinking we want to do for officials within USA Hockey. And two things that stuck out of my mind at that are really incorporated today is one, we're going to call a way tighter game than we used to call. Like there actually used to be 4 criteria that had to be met for you to call a penalty. And they went, yeah, we're going to go away with that. And it's going to be, if this happens, you call a penalty. And so they played halves. So it was 2 halves of a game. I mean, there was 20-minute halves where we would call 15 penalties in a 20-minute half. And then we'd get evaluated and they go, you missed 6 more. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, hello.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they incorporated was starting this whole, you can't ice the puck on the penalty kill deal. Well, I still think that they need to go back because I think that rule is complete garbage.
I also hate that rule. I'm so glad you hate it because I hate that rule.
It's horrible. Like, I understand the intent behind it, but it's not hockey. Like, the higher levels aren't going to change the rules. So why are we trying to incorporate that down here?
Yeah,
I know.
But
I agree.
But I will say, you know, again, these are the top under 18 kids that are at this camp, right? So it actually didn't take them long to figure out, hey, I can chip this off the glass and not just fire it down the ice and still change and do all that kind of stuff. So we got to do all of that kind of fun stuff. So after all those camps, then you kind of get evaluated by all your evaluators. There's junior hockey guys that are there, and you start working in the junior system and all that kind of stuff. And eventually you keep working your way up. But like, you know, for me, kind of where things kind of split ways, so to speak, I guess is what I would say, is I went to all these camps. I did really good. They really liked me. They wanted me to keep going. But the crazy thing is they would tell you at the camp, which is great because they're being honest, but was, hey, so here's the deal. Like, right now at this national camp, you are within the top 0.05% of all officials in the country. But once you continue your career and keep moving up, it's a lot of a timing thing, right? So, you know, the guys that are the top officials in the American League Hockey League, which is right underneath the NHL, are just as good as the guys that are ref in the NHL. But they need to get the opportunity to ultimately ref in the NHL. And that usually takes a retirement or an injury or whatever, because guys don't get fired in the NHL. So it's like, I appreciate what you're telling me, but basically what you're telling me is that this is kind of a crapshoot. Like, it doesn't matter how good I actually am. Like, I may or may not get an opportunity to get there. And so after that camp, it was kind of one of those things where, you know, I kept officiating for a number of years after that, but it was like the dream of officiating in NHL. I had gotten engaged to my now current wife and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, you know what? I don't think I'm really up for the crapshoot of this, but I still want to keep officiating. And so after that, went back home after I told the guys, and they were all very disappointed and argued with me and tried to convince me that that was a bad decision and all the things to stop kind of trying to go down that path. But then I got into college hockey and worked in the WCHA for about 10 years and really enjoyed that. And then it was just kind of like, you know, my kids are old enough. I'm in a rink enough. I don't need to be running around the country and you know, still officiating. So it's been about, well, it was really right after the COVID season that I kind of said, you know what, I don't need all this COVID protocol stuff. I'm going to call her a day. I'm out.
Yeah.
Geez, yeah.
Do they, and you don't have to say specifically what you make, because if that's too personal, but is the compensation good at the college level? Do they pay well for reffing?
So the compensation at the college level is actually really good. So, I mean, it is. I mean, you can't really, like, it can't be your only job. But I mean,
Yeah.
the top guys at the college level, especially on the men's side, like I mean, the guys that are reffing that have the orange bands on every week, if they're working on a consistent basis, I mean, they make somewhere around $700 a game plus their per
So that is
diem.
pretty good.
So, but at the end of the day, it probably equates to, you know, if you work all the way through the season and work playoffs and that kind of thing, you maybe make 40, 50 grand. I mean, I guess that could be your job, but that's probably not what you're looking for.
Right.
But the guys at the higher levels, like that was one of the things, right? Like, so when we went to these camps, like one of the things that they talked about is here's the income opportunity. Like if you're, and this was, you know, we're going on almost 20 years ago now, like linesman, like incoming salary as a linesman in NHL is about 250 grand. And a referee was about 400 grand, right?
That's wild.
So, I mean,
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I mean, they make good money, but again, there's 88 officials in the NHL. 88. So, like, you talk about how hard it is to be an NHL player. Well, if there's, you know, 25 guys on a roster and there's 30 teams, right? You're talking 700 players. We're talking 88 officials.
For the whole league.
How do you find 88 blind dudes that can officiate at the NHL?
Oh, fuck right off.
Wild.
I knew that was going to come from Corey.
I listened carefully for like the 5 minutes and I pretended to be awake for the whole thing. You got to give me some.
Supposed to be a friendly podcast, Corey.
So here's the good thing for the podcast is that I actually had to meet up with someone prior to the podcast that some of you might know, and we might have had a few beers before that. So this could get dark.
Right.
That's really
We're here for it.
That's what we signed up for. Last episode was really, it was like a high level discussion for us, and I was so disappointed in really in everybody, and especially
way too reasonable. Yeah.
So you started as a 10-year-old. Any how did that's it seems awfully young.
Yeah.
Now.
Super young.
With all of us having 12-year-olds, like, you know, they can't look after themselves, let alone a hockey game. So how did you have an epiphany about getting into it? It was just a little bit of money, just wanting to be involved?
You know, to be honest, I don't really know exactly why I said I wanted to start doing it, but I will tell you, I'm super happy that I did start doing it. So actually my son started reffing when I think he was 11, and he's been doing it and he likes doing it. I think he likes it more for the money than anything else. But but one of the things that I thought as a 10-year-old, maybe not as a 10-year-old, maybe a couple of years after doing it as, you know, maybe a 12-year-old, was I thought it was the best thing in the world where I had the authority to kick out a 30 or 40 or 50-year-old coach. And I thought that was great.
What is the minimum age currently to be a ref?
Well, so how it works, right? So you cannot ref anything that's your same age, right? So like if you're 10, you can only really ref, what would that be, mites? Because if you're 10, you're squirts.
Yeah.
10 or 11. So you can't work the same age that you are. Now, obviously, as you get older, that starts to change because eventually the players become almost as old as you are to a certain extent. But that's kind of the deal, is that you have to ref an age group younger than what you're playing at. But I will tell you, like, if you start young, the great thing, and so like this is really what I learned when I went to Mankato, right? Was that, well, I've been doing it for 8 years, so I knew what I was doing already. It is, and I tell parents and kids this all the time, it is 100% the best college job that any kid can have. So like if you enjoy hockey and you like it, but you're not going to be playing at a college level and that kind of thing, if you can get into reffing, the best part is that it's typically all cash. You get paid pretty well. Like a high school game, I don't know what they make now, but I mean, when I was doing it, again, this is 20 years ago, if I reffed a high school game in Mankato, and if you ref the JV game and the varsity game, you're making $175, $200 for the night. And then it's a high school game, right? So you're done by 10 o'clock at night at the latest, probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. Your buddies don't go out till 10, 10:30. So you didn't miss anything. And now you have a pocket full of cash.
Right.
Right.
That's a really good point.
So, go ahead, Kyle.
No, this is, we'll have to let everybody have a couple more drinks first, because I was going to try and go dark right away. So Corey.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask Josh. Did reffing make you a belligerent jerk, or were you just born that way?
No, I was just born that way.
Okay.
Hence at age 10, 11, or 12, I wanted to kick out coaches that were 30 or 40 years old.
I like it.
So just so everyone knows who doesn't know Josh and my relationship. So I met Josh when our oldest, Josh's only boy, my oldest boy, wanted to play travel baseball, and I was rooked into coaching that team by Jason Ulmer. And when we were at the meeting, we said, "Hey, do any other dads have baseball experience?" And that's how I met Josh. And Josh became a coach, and Josh and I coached baseball from their 9U through last season. So we've known each other for a lot of time. I've had the pleasure of sharing a dugout with him, and he's got way too many stories on me. So I'm going to be very, very careful this evening.
There's a pretty good chance that the best story that I know that you know what the best story is going to come out at some point.
Yeah, but I got some bench minor stories when you were still coaching that I could bust out from Fort Garry.
See, but I have no shame.
Treat this like a confessional and just spill it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right?
We love it.
So Josh,
I love that at 10 you wanted to kick out dads, because that's kind of one of the, like, I don't know about you guys, but like one thing that's so hard is that I get so pissed off when we at our boys' age, when we have young refs and the coaches bully them.
Yeah.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it, because I think, these kids are trying to learn.
Correct.
They're here, they are the official. And we played against a team, would have been 2 years ago, because it was Jets.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this was Fargo. And so we had one of our players got hit. Then the coach, or excuse me, sorry, the ref called it. Our player retaliated, so he called the retaliation, and it was both the boys were going to go to the box, because there was the initial cheap hit, then the retaliation, so it was going to be them both. So the players start going, and the Fargo coach, we had two young refs that probably were about 14 apiece. Yeah. And the coach from the Fargo team goes, "No, our player's not taking a penalty on it. Come back to the bench right now." And these refs are standing there and they're like, no, the original penalty was called on him, and so it's both of them. And Fargo coach goes, "No, it's not. It's them, and we're not having a penalty." And when I tell you, he told his player to come back to the box, and then told the refs, keep the game going. And these two poor teenage boys looked at each other like, what do we even do here? And they just kept the game going. And it was wild. And I was so upset about it, because I was like, these kids didn't come here to have you undermine them or be mean to them or intimidate them. They're trying to call a safe game here. And it should have been both. I mean, they were two blatantly obvious calls, but that coach said, nope, oldest player to get back on the bench, and said, carry on.
Yeah, so I would tell you two things about that. So like one, so when I'm watching a game today, my two biggest pet peeves are, one, you don't berate younger officials, especially at a younger level, right? They're learning just like your players are learning. Like half of your players don't know what offsides are. Why are you bitching at the ref for calling offsides incorrectly? Like, right. Come on, right? And then the second one is more of a local story, and you guys actually might hate me for this, but I was the official that worked the first game of Matt Palmasino's career with him as an official. And I told Matt in the locker room, and so I know Matt's dad, like we used to be like 3 houses down from each other. We were family friends, and so I know Steve from a long time way back. And Steve was a great official. He worked in the WCHA himself. And I told Matt in his first game, that I'm working with him. So Matt would have been probably 11-ish, and I would have been 15, approximately, somewhere in that ballpark, I think is our age difference. And so we're sitting in the locker room, and I go, Matt, you don't take shit from any coach. No shit from any coach. And he goes, okay, got it. So we're working a game, and I don't remember who the teams were, but I remember it was at Eagles Arena. And we're in the second period, and Matt had called a penalty. And so now I'm dropping the puck, or maybe it was the next whistle, because I was dropping the puck and Matt was by. So in reffing, one of the things that you do is whoever calls the penalty doesn't stand by that bench. Like, you don't want to incite another penalty or coach yelling or whatever, right? So it must have been the next whistle, because I was dropping the puck and Matt was standing in front of the bench. And the coach starts saying something to Matt, and I'm literally, as I drop the puck, Matt blows his whistle, turns around, and kicks the coach out. So Matt might do that to a little bit of an extreme today still, but I might have to take a lot of blame in that. So Palmo, if you ever listen to this podcast, I will take the blame for your potential bad rap as a referee.
Exactly.
So I don't know about you guys, but I actually really like animated refs. The more belligerent the ref is on their calls, the better. And I actually got a chance to watch Palmo officiate a game last weekend, and I could hear him yelling at the coaches when the coaches would get on him, and I loved every minute of it. Like, it was fantastic. Like, I've tried. So full disclosure, Josh's boy and my boy actually both ref, and I've been trying to convince my child to be more belligerent, but Josh knows my oldest son, and if he says 2 words in a given day, it's probably been a good day for him.
And it was also like this.
Looking at the ground.
Girls. But he was I have only watched him ref one game, which is first game, and I had a full weekend of hockey 2 weekends ago, and I just finished up Parker's game, and I dropped him off at home, and I was like, Cam has 2 shifts left, or he should have about 2 periods left in the game he's reffing. I should probably watch one of the games he refs. So I went and sat in the stands, and I just so happened to sit right next to the rink manager, who was Summer Kwame. And Summer and I were chatting about the game, and it was 9:00 at night. It was a lower tier game at a younger level, and the parents were hammered, like very, very drunk.
That's shocking, by the way.
Yeah, it was everything I hoped for and more when I went and sat down. And the crowd turned against the referees early in that game, and it was awful. And Summer says to me, I have no idea how you're handling these drunk idiots yelling at your kid. And I turned to Summer and I said, well, I mean, they're not wrong. He's been terrible all game.
Nothing like your dad backing you up.
He missed a lot of calls, let's be honest.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Poor guy.
Poor Cam.
So Josh, I dig it, Kyle. I've interrupted you like 10 times tonight.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, coaching Pee Wee this year, and I think the officials now seem, as opposed to when I coached, 10, 12 years ago, seem to be pretty good about trying to start a dialogue at the beginning of games, which I think is good. Just kind of humanizes the guys a little bit. And I'll usually stand at the front of the bench for warm up. Ref will always come over and say, hey, if you need anything, just call us over. And every time I say, hey, will a text work? Not once has one of those guys laughed. So, if you could like spread that out in a ref newsletter, I'd appreciate it.
So, but here's the deal though. Like, my whole thing, and this is actually just my whole philosophy in life in general. Like, if you're not having fun, what's the point? Like, I honestly love the banter between referee and coach if it's appropriate banter, right? So like one of the things I will tell you, and this isn't me sucking up to one of the podcast hosts, but when I repped Central's games, we had so much fun because between the 3 of those guys on the bench and me, and I knew them all. I mean, your husband and Timmy, and like, they were my buddies, or my brother, youngest brother's age, right? So they were all buddies. So I've known these guys for years, right? And so like it was so fun to like go back and forth and have the banter.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's, to me as the referee, like that's super fun. And the same thing, even at the college level, honestly. So when the last stuff that I did was women's WCHA stuff, and that was, UND had a team until they didn't have a team. But Fabian was one of the coaches, which I know is actually Corey's neighbor, which is actually how we refer to Corey as Fabian's neighbor.
Right?
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, but like Fabian and I would literally yell at each other on the ice. He'd be like, "Brownie, that's an ice," and I'd be like, "No, it's not." He'd be like, "Okay."
All right. But I think that's the good thing. I mean, even, we were talking about officiating, and even Matt was talking about him and another friend of ours, Steve Howe, when Steve will ref, and he goes, my favorite part of Steve though is he said, we can be screaming at each other on the ice. He's like, and totally disagreeing on something. He goes, and the next time I see him, when the game is done, we're totally fine with each other. He said, because it's just about the game. We're all in the game. We're all doing it. He's like, but it's left there. It's not a personal thing. He's like, it has to be that way because it isn't personal. You're just in the intensity of the game. And he's, because I even asked Matt one time, because Matt's a notorious yeller. And I said, have you ever had a ref overturn a call when you've argued with them? And he's like, no, never. I go, why do you do it? He's like, well, you gotta let him know. And I'm like, I've never once seen, shy of that game where that adult intimidated two 14-year-olds, which doesn't count in my opinion. But I have never seen like a high school coach call a ref over, go, I don't think that he should go in the box, and the ref is like, you're right, let him out right now. I've never seen it happen. So it always kind of confuses me.
So
one of the, just real briefly, Josh, one of the reasons Steve and Matt get along, what kind of skates Steve wears?
Graphs.
Yeah.
So they got a connection already.
He's a lot with Matt for sure. Yeah. Friends.
Because Matt's a graph guy. Am I following this correctly?
Guy to the heart.
So okay, so if he's a true graph guy, that means he probably doesn't wear socks in his skates.
He does not ever. No,
never
ever.
That's very dangerous. So when I played high school, I didn't wear socks, and the guys that sharpened skates for Red River back in the day actually made me sharpen my own skates because they smelt so bad.
I understand that. So Matt's brother Casey, who also Casey was a goalie, did not wear socks in his skates. When he would drop his skates off at Jarrell's, they'd go, Case, we'll sharpen them, but you're gonna pick them up in the alley because the smell is too bad. Like we can't. So they will be on the outside of the building waiting for you. We'll sharpen them, but my God, because they don't. Matt is the same way. He does not wear socks in his skates. He doesn't like the feel of it.
See, and that's so honestly, so here's the funny part that you may or may not know is that so Casey is my brother Joe's age.
Yep.
And Matt is my brother's Jake's age. And so I've known the Moorlands for longer than I'd like to admit.
So are old men's skaters wearing graphs like me wearing my Nike Air Monarchs to mow the lawn? I mean, is that an equivalent?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Never let go. Never ever
Hashtag
let go.
gadget.
Well, I have to ask. So I have multiple questions, but one of my biggest ones is, as we're talking about deranged coaches, but it doesn't have to just be coaches, it can be parents as well. What is the most deranged thing you have had said to you or you've had to deal with as a ref? Like, who's the most deranged person where you have thought, this is insane?
Deranged is a kind of an aggressive word.
But just well, it might be appropriate.
So
if they suck, give us their name.
So what I would tell, so like what I would tell you is, from my experience, the parents at the younger levels are worse than the parents at the older levels. Like it's just that's what it is, right? So like when I was 22 and working junior hockey and all the other stuff, and then would go work a squirt game on a Saturday morning just because it needed to be worked and there was a young guy reffing and you need an older guy with them or whatever it was. Those are the parents who are just like, oh my God, can you guys calm down? Like, your kid's not Wayne Gretzky. Like, they're not going to the NHL. Just please calm the hell down. Like, nothing they said was actually rational. Like, so it was never like super like realistic. It's just like, can you please stop yelling from the top of the stands? Like, I know who you are. And I was always the ref that would look up at them, especially in a smaller rink. Like, I know it's you. Like, I can see you. I know you're not talking right now, but I'm looking at you. So one of the best things was when I was younger, especially when I was working in Grand Forks, as I got more advanced and knew what I was doing and whatever, was to go work at the Blue Line Club, which is, where they have the bar, the rail at the top that actually kind of almost hangs over the ice.
Yeah.
I've literally thrown my whistle to multiple parents and said, hey, you want to ref the game? Here you go.
Which is so fair.
I like
Which
that.
the best thing is
fair.
I always had a second whistle in my pocket, so it didn't matter if he kept it or if he threw it back at me or whatever. But
Come on down.
yeah, here you go.
Oh Lord.
So, I mean, I don't know that I have a deranged story because I probably just like put those way deep down in the memory bank. But like, the best thing that I've ever heard on the ice, and I think I've told this story. Corey's probably heard this a handful of times, but so I went to school in Mankato, which is about 45 minutes from Faribault, which is where Shattuck is. So I worked a lot at Shattuck through my college career in my college time. And working the top level games at Shattuck, I mean, they got teams coming from all over the country, right? And most of those coaches are awesome people. Like, they're not yelling at the refs, they're yelling more at their players and all that kind of stuff. The refs just kind of there, right? And actually, Tom Ward, who was the Shattuck coach at the time, was the best at this. Like, if Tom's yelling at you, you fucked up because he doesn't yell. Like, if he's yelling at you, you should be thinking about what happened because you definitely missed something. But it was a different coach. I think he was from Omaha.
Oh gosh,
might have been Chicago.
You know what, Josh, I knew it. I 100% knew it. I know who this is. I heard him yell something at a kid that would, even Kelly would be like, too far.
Whoa.
Well, so this is the top team, right? So these are 18-ish-year-old kids, right? Probably 16 to 18. You might have a 15-year-old on there. You maybe have a 14-year-old on there. Speaking of which, actually, the first year that I started repping at Shattuck was the one year that Sidney Crosby played at Shattuck.
Oh, wow.
And man, that kid, like, he had blue toques, which for no reason other than he wanted to completely make sure that everybody knew who he was, but you knew who he was. Like, he was 14 and he was the best kid on the team, right? Like, it was insane. But so the coach, like I said, I think it was either Omaha or Chicago. I think it was Omaha.
It was Omaha.
And this coach,
we'll have him on as a guest.
I doubt maybe he's still coaching. I don't know. I mean, he was pretty young when he was coaching there.
But he's still coaching.
So this was hilarious. So I actually, even after I moved back to Grand Forks 13 years ago, the first couple of years I moved back here, I would go back down to Shattuck and ref their Christmas tournament where they had all these teams come in, because we would have 3 guys, and it was me and 2 other guys that I've known forever, and we would all ref together, and we'd rotate ref, line, ref. Like, so there's 3 of us, there's 1 referee. We would just rotate through and referee games. And so I was lining this game, and I don't remember if it was a morning or afternoon or whatever, but his team's on the power play, and I'm the linesman standing in front of his bench. So it had to have been the second period because they couldn't break the puck out. So they're trying to score, right? They're on the power play. So I would be standing in front of their bench waiting for them to come to the blue line so I could call, offsides or call it good or whatever, right? And they keep getting it like to their own defensive blue line, maybe a little bit past it, and then it would get shot back in. And this happened over and over and over for probably a minute and a half. And this guy stands up on the bench, and I'm standing right in front of his bench. And he stands up in front of the bench and yells at the top of his lungs, "You gotta be fist fucking me right now. Get the fucking puck out of the zone." And I started laughing like uncontrollably. And I like do one of these, like turn back and look as he's standing there, like bawling. And he goes, "That was pretty good, wasn't it?"
It's one of my favorite phrases.
He's actually not a bad dude, but just some of the stuff like if you're under 16, you should probably leave the room. 1, 2, 3. Watching the game at Shattuck, an old rink, visitor locker room kind of at the end of the rink there. Kid comes out, kind of looks. Mom comes down with the Powerade between periods. I'm like, oh shit. Coach is standing there, just kind of lets mom go by, lets her go by, and then while mom can still hear, "Hey, did she suck your dick too?" I'm like, oh shit. 15 or 16, like, all right.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's the same guy, Josh. I guarantee it. Really not a bad dude.
Had to be
I'm
said.
sure. I'm sure it's the same guy because this would have been. I mean, this was probably best case was 2010, but
Yeah.
probably was something around 2009, and he couldn't have been more than 25 years old or so when I was working that game. But it was hilarious.
Yeah,
That is fantastic.
Played in the Western Hockey League. Yeah.
Hey, Josh, we've talked about this before, but for the podcast purposes, you've had a number of experiences where you've been reffing a game and the coach wants you to give him the gate. Why don't you talk about those experiences?
All right, so I know which one you're talking about. So this is again at Shattuck, and this was actually at the old rink. So again, it's the same tournament, right? It's the Christmas prep team tournament, right? So all these teams come in from Chicago and Omaha and Wisconsin and Dallas and Arizona and wherever they're all from, right? And so as refs, so like I was saying, so like there's 3 of us, and we'll work all day. We'll work all day Friday, we work all day Saturday, we work all day Sunday. We just rotate who's reffing and who's lining. And so when we're done, so the last game usually starts at probably around 6, right? So we're probably done about 8:30. So we get done, we shower up, go grab a quick dinner and a couple beers, and then we go back to the hotel and drink, 15 more beers or whatever, so that we can get up at 7 and start reffing again at 8 a.m. But we're reffing, and so like my deal was always, I want to be the ref in the first game. I know it's going to suck. I know we're all a little hungover, but I'm going to sweat it out, and then I'm going to be fine for the rest of the day, right? Because in a 1-2 system at that level, 1-2 system, like you are busting your ass. And so I'm the referee going up and down the ice, up and down the ice, up and down the ice, right? So we're in the first period, and I called a penalty probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes into the game on the other team. And this guy starts barking. I'm like, what the hell is this guy barking about? Like, I didn't call a penalty on this team. I called on the other team. And then about 30 seconds into the power play, I call a penalty on his team. And he starts barking again. And so at the old rink at Shattuck, it's like most rinks, right? Where the penalty box separates the 2 benches, right? So I'm standing in front of the penalty box and telling the guys the signal and giving them what the penalty was. And then I got to go skate down to his defensive zone to, be on the goal line. As I'm skating by, he says something to me, and I don't even know what he said. And I'm like, and I stop, and I turn and I go, "What'd you say?" And I said something to the effect of, "That was horse shit. What are you trying to do?" Something, whatever. And I'm like, dude, just like, it's freaking 3 minutes into the game. Calm down. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I'm hungover. Like, relax. Right? So then the next whistle happens. I think it was an offsides. And so then they're going to drop the puck on his blue line, but at the other side. So I'm literally standing in front of the bench. And this guy just keeps talking. And I turn around and I go, "Are you going to quit talking, or am I going to have to give you a bench minor?" And he goes, "Well, I'm not going to quit talking." So I'm like, "Okay, fine. Boom, here you go." So I give him a bench minor penalty. And I go, "Now are you going to quit talking?" He goes, "No, I'm not going to quit talking. This is fucking bullshit." And I go, "Okay, fine. See ya." About 30 seconds later, as he instantly leaves the bench, instantly, I go, he's hungover. He wanted to get kicked out so he can go back and sleep until his 2 o'clock game. That little fucker, I should have made him stay on the bench the whole goddamn time.
Yeah, I'm leaving too then.
Correct, right? Like, I'm out
We're
then.
both
I'm out.
leaving.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's genius. I really do like his thinking.
So the fastest I've ever kicked a guy out is about 3 minutes into a game, and I instantly regretted it.
Yeah, you gave him exactly what he wanted.
One of the questions I wanted to ask, sort of two-pronged question, going back to the higher level stuff with the USA Hockey business. Did you ever run into a guy named Scott Brand?
Yeah, how deep do you want to go down this hole?
That's another episode.
Going down the rabbit hole.
Also a future guest. Owes me
He's
one.
a future guest.
Yeah.
I'd be careful with that future guest, and now I'm going to be very careful with what I say.
Oh no, he knows. This is not a Scott Brand question. This was sort of a segue. Right out of law school, I worked with the USHL for a number of years, and just sort of a catch-all type of position. One of the things I have to do is sort of look after the officials from time to time. During the Clark Cup, I had to take the Clark Cup to Omaha. So rode around in the trunk of my wife's Civic for a number of days because I just left it there. Anyway, hanging out with the officials, didn't know them very well, but one of the kids, Dana Pinkovich, you ever?
I know Dana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Anyway,
this is my time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to toss Dana under the bench, but just hanging out with a few of those guys. The son of a NHL guy, you probably know him. Worked with Dana a lot, and having dinner at like wherever. I'm like, when a table full of girls nearby, I'm like, are those girls checking you guys out? What's going on here? And they're like, yeah, we have groupies. I'm like, what? Bullshit, you guys have groupies. They're like, fuck yeah, we do. I'm like, what? You got to tell me about this. So group of girls would follow them around to USHL games, not Dana, follow these guys around. And I'm like, what's the deal? It's like, listen, we've got money. We don't have to go to sleep early. And we've got nothing but time. So we have chicks that just follow us around the hotels. I'm like, I miss my calling, obviously. Like, so expound upon that.
So them saying they have money would definitely be an overstatement, because when we worked in juniors back then, we didn't have any fucking money. Like,
as compared to the 19-year-olds playing in the USHL, it's all relative.
It's all relative. But so here's the deal. So back in those days, right? So one, our compensation was pretty shitty. Like this is me going off of memory, so don't take this as actual numbers. But I think the refs got paid about $175 a game, and I think us lineys got paid about $100 a game, approximately.
$100 a game in Sioux City, Iowa. You are basically the mayor.
Yeah, you haven't hit the punchline yet. We would have to travel all over the upper Midwest, right?
Yeah.
Guess how much they paid us in mileage back then?
I don't want to know.
Nope, you really don't. 4 cents a mile.
Holy shit.
Oh. Bro.
Because
we were independent contractors, right? Like, this wasn't an employee deal, right? Like, there was no federal mileage. Like, yeah, we got F. Like, so the one Scott Brand story that I will tell in this, and we can have a different conversation offline if you want. But if you know him and he's going to be online, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But the one story I will tell about Scott Brand is that, so like, one of the worst things about officiating as you work your way up the ranks is all of the different rule books that you have to work through. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So back in the day, right, there was the regular USA rule book. If you refereed high school, there was the NFHS rule book. If you ref in college hockey, there was the NCAA rule book. Yeah. And then if you rep juniors, there was the junior rule book. Yeah. All different. I mean, similar, but they had differences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the first years, maybe it was year 2 or 3 that I was working juniors. So the junior rule book was literally just like printed by a printer on like normal 8x12 paper, right? That was bound and then had a cover and a back cover and whatever. And one of the years, the guy that prints them out, I think he was out of the cities, but I could be wrong on that. But whoever was printing them said, well, what color do you want the cover? And Scott Brand goes, I don't fucking care what color the fucking cover is. Make it pink for all I fucking care. So we had pink rule books one year.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Correct.
He didn't care. He told you.
Yeah. Well, he didn't care.
Perfect. I still have, I looked after those guys so much that one year I got one of the, did you get one of those USHL hats that just said a fit like USHL, then official?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're the
You don't
only
want
two
to, you
guys
actually
with
don't
that
really
hat.
want, you don't really want to actually wear those anymore though?
No, I just keep it in a trunk downstairs.
Yeah.
But so that was the other thing. Like, so the other thing with like, so kind of like, so this, I would say this is the dark side of officiating, but not the deep dark side of officiating, is that there's a lot of shenanigans that happen on the road.
Yeah.
And if you're married or engaged or whatever, like that's not your deal.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes it very difficult to continue to do it when you're in that, like, the less opportunity you put yourself in those positions, right? Like kind of that kind of a deal, right? So like if you're a single guy, awesome.
Yeah.
Not a single guy, nah, not quite so much.
Not a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could paint, like, if I asked Kelly right now to give me just like a sort of a composite sketch of a Minnesota hockey mom, she would nail it. Like, I know I would get it. What would I get if I asked you for a composite of a referee groupie?
A referee groupie?
Yeah. Master's degree, working your way through a doctorate, like
No.
a glass of wine every so often. What are we getting at?
No, you're getting the high school dropout.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I'm channeling Office Space when Dietrich is talking about the kind of girl who go double time on me. If you remember that scene from the movie,
Right. Yeah, and a lot of flair.
Yeah, a whole lot of flair.
A lot of flair.
I think that's what it was called in Office Space, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Yes,
Oh,
flair.
yeah.
The button.
16 pieces of
Where's
flair.
your flair?
Which
Oh.
a good piece of trivia. After that movie, TGI Fridays officially got rid of their policy that workers had to wear so much flair.
No
Flair.
kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I was just say, is there, even roughly speaking, a ranking of groupie cities in the USHL from high end to low end, and why is city at the low end?
He's not going to give this up, Josh. He's just
This is Kyle. This is Kyle's corner right here. This is.
I'm
I love it.
not gonna lie. Like I said, by the time I got to the junior stuff, like I was already tied down, so to speak. So like that really wasn't the deal. But I will tell you the best rink to work at, and it wasn't USHL. It was actually North American League hockey, and I think they're probably still North American League. I'm not really sure, but was in northern Iowa.
Oh,
Madison City, I believe, is the town, and the rink was right on the fairgrounds. And they had, if the team scored within the last 5 minutes of a period, it was dollar beers.
Oh yeah.
So that was great for the fans. But the best thing about working in that rink was when the game was done, they brought you a 6-pack and 2 pizzas into the locker room for you. And it was like, and again, we didn't make a lot of money. So like 2 pizzas and a 6-pack of beer when there's 3 of us working. So we each got 2 beers and half a pizza. Like it was perfect.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a deal.
Love it. Well, I have a rule book question. So.
Oh, here she
because-
goes.
No,
Jack
but
got a
you know,
penalty called on him, man.
no. It's just a random. This is just the nerd side of me because I know that you have to learn these rule books, and like most people, although like the majority of people at a hockey rink talk as though they know all the rules of all hockey. What is there any like obscure hockey rule that would surprise people as a rule, or what's the weirdest penalty you've had to call? Because like slashing happened. Checking, all that. Like, what's the weirdest penalty you've ever had to call that is a rule in hockey?
So there's 2 things. So the most obscure, I would actually say non-rule, is that you cannot technically cross check somebody if your stick's on the ice. So you can literally be beating the shit out of somebody with your stick as long as the blade's on the ice. And that's in the rule book, right?
Probably
Like
bad
most people don't know
information,
that.
but not that there's high
Right?
schoolers that are gonna perk right up.
Correct. So that's kind of like the obscure rule, but like the worst one, honestly, the worst one is a match penalty in USA hockey, right? Like that's where you get kicked out. You actually have to go in front of a board and kind of plead your case of what you did and all that kind of stuff. Most refs probably have never called that in their career. I called it, I think, only once, and it was because they shoved the linesman. Like you can't hit at a referee. Like if you hit a referee, that's a match penalty. Like automatic, there's no question. You don't have a choice. Like it's a match penalty. So I had in a junior gold game one time, I was reffing. There was a big fight. My linesman's breaking it up. He's taking the kid that I kicked out of the game over to not the penalty box, to the dressing room door. And as he's taking him there, he like completely shoves him. Right. So I'm like, okay, well now that's a match.
Right. You have to call that.
Right. But I would say, I mean, there is a lot of if you really get into reffing, like the one thing that even a lot of refs don't do is actually read the rule book cover to cover. But you should read it cover to cover, because you do find stuff. And even when you've been reffing for 15 years, when you read that rule book again, you go, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that, or I didn't know that. Right.
Right.
So like jewelry is like a good example, right? Like, so jewelry, you can't wear jewelry while you're playing. But if it's religious related, it's okay.
Then you can't make them take it off. Yeah.
Correct. So it's like, that's a kind of an obscure thing, right? Like it's not really a thing, but it's kind of a thing, right? So, but yeah, there's not a lot of like super weird stuff in the rule book. But like, I guess another one would be like, for tripping, as an example, you actually don't have to trip the guy to get called for tripping. Like you have to intend to trip. Like if you tried to trip a guy and you didn't trip him, it's still a penalty.
It's still tripping. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know. Yeah. I would have thought that you had to successfully trip them, but that makes sense. That only even in just attempting to trip them is the penalty.
Now the question then becomes, am I going to call it? Am I not going to call it? That kind of thing, right? So, but that's the thing that USA Hockey took out. Like they took a lot of the discretion out, which is really good for younger officials, right? Like, hey, I don't have a choice. Like, here's what I have to call. But it makes it harder on more experienced officials to go, hey, like in all reality, yes, is it technically a penalty? Yes, per the book. But the intent of the rule is this, so I'm not calling that.
Right. Okay. So when I was in high school at Central, one of the boys on our team got a kicking penalty, and that was the first that I had seen in hockey. And he did kick the other player. Well, he attempted to. The player moved, but he fully kicked him. And I was like, "Gosh, a kicking penalty! You don't see that all the time."
No, but that's an out. But actually, last weekend in our Bantam AA game, there was a face masking penalty called, which is actually legit. Like if you grab a guy's face mask, it's no choice, 5 in a game.
15 yards and automatic first down.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's football.
And that was, kicking was an automatic out. He was ejected from that game and the next one, but and he really did. You just don't hear kicking all the time in hockey. No. It's like, kicking penalty. Okay.
Well, your point about always reading the rule book is why Kyle has a complete, unabridged, and annotated version of the North Dakota Century Code in his bathroom. But to add to that point, this weekend, Kyle's team he coaches, which has my other son on it, my middle boy was exiting the zone with a puck and he was tripped, and there was no call. And I was working the box, and the refs came to the box.
Was this when you were working the box with your foot up on the dasher, like looking all
100%?
I got a separate text about that from Danny Mardo. Hey, I'm like, dude, I saw it.
Yeah, I want you guys to know I look amazing when I work my volunteer hours, and I'm not ashamed. But the refs come in between periods, and they're talking about the trip call and how angry the kid, my son, was about not getting called for tripping, and the ref says to me, I don't know what that kid's so angry about. He got tripped by a guy who was laying down the ice, had one hand on his stick, and barely touched the kid's skates, and he fell over. And any kind of kid who's that weak on his skate shouldn't have a penalty called against him.
Oh,
And I
No.
looked right at the ref and I was like, well, I can't argue with you on that one.
Corey.
You picked the right dad to say that too.
Right. Did the ref say anything about the construction work the head coach of the Pee Wee team does?
He did not say anything about that, but I certainly can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hendry's Construction Services, they have 20 years of experience in all areas of construction. Projects worked on include banks, oral surgery, offices, dental offices, schools, retail space, auto body shops, you name it, they can build it. They offer assistance with all phases of construction from the initial design phase all the way through completion. You dream it, they make it a reality. The quality you want, the service you deserve, Hendry's Construction Services.
Corey, tremendously well done.
Great
I
segue.
work on it. I work on it every day.
You know what? You can tell.
Do you know why you work on it every day? Because if you don't, Sean's gonna kill you.
Yeah, likely. Let's be honest. I once told Parker, I said, mess with Kyle, your coach, mess with your other coach. I can't remember his name, Fuller something or other, but don't mess with Sean. Hey, Josh, what is the absolute worst chirp? It's a segment. Worst chirp statement thing you've ever heard someone say while you were reffing a game?
Worst chirp.
Yeah, or worst isn't like it could be the best chirp you've ever heard, or just like let's go down the rabbit hole, full dark. What have you heard?
So I get a lot of those things. Like, to me, they're more funny than anything else. So like I hear them and I'm probably too old to remember exactly what they were, but it was me laughing. But I was always the guy that would give a look and either smile or give the like, dude, really, what the fuck kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know that I can answer that question, but the worst thing that I ever heard on the ice, and this is because it was so inappropriate in my opinion, was I was working a high school girls game in New Ulm back when I was in college. And one of the girls on the team scored, and I have the puck and I'm ready to drop it at center ice for after the goal. And another girl, I can't remember which one was which, doesn't really make a difference, but I'm standing there at the dot and one girl comes up to the other girl and one of them says, "That was so hot. I want to twiddle your twat in the locker room when this is over." And I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to hear that. I'm like, this, like, you're like 16 and I'm 22. Like, I don't, like, I just dropped the puck and like got the hell out of there.
Yeah,
like I didn't know.
Don't end up on a list.
Yeah, get me as far away from this as possible. Oh Lord, but you know what? We have heard, as we have talked to people, that it's the girls you gotta look out for. That they have the meanest chirps.
Oh.
They go the meanest. That wasn't that mean. That was complimentary, I guess.
That was complimentary, yes.
Yeah,
but I mean, like, yeah, no.
The intention was a compliment.
Yeah.
Women's college hockey was the worst. Like, they were horrible to each other. Like, you heard things like there was a lot of C words involved and all the other things. It's like, I don't think that I'm supposed to be hearing like this. Like, I don't think this is okay.
Hey, girls, stop or whatever. Don't yell at me.
You probably ran into Kevin Vaughn with UND women's hockey. He kept a list of like the worst things he'd hear. And
there's a lot of not repeatables.
Right. The C word's big. Like I had to
very big.
The women's team had sort of like an ID camp and they're, these girls were 16, 17. The referee didn't show up. And so I filled in that Sunday morning. It's like 9:30 after a broken wrist. And then the stuff they'd say to each other, just dropping the puck. Like there was no altercation. There was nothing going on. They just skate up and say, "Hey, I bet your something smells." I'm like, what the fuck? It's Sunday. I should be at mass.
Why are we doing this?
Crazy.
You're not wrong.
No, right?
What just happened?
Yeah. Bizarre.
So Josh,
but boys, I don't feel like don't they chirp and you can hear it through the glass, like I mean it's you can hear it, but I don't know if they go quite so mean. Like it stays a little bit more surface level.
It's more of like almost like your mama jokes, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
Girls, man, they cut to the bone. That's all right. I kind of
So,
like it.
Josh, you've refed at different levels, all the way up to the WCHA. Do you find it hard to watch games as a non-ref, as a parent now, knowing the rules and being at your level of experience, and then trying to watch referees that aren't great, maybe, or still learning?
it's better now that I've been out for a few years, right? Like it used to be all I would do was actually focus on the referees, right? So like we have season tickets for the men's two games, right? And we're right on the blue line. And I was typically a linesman, right? Like I refed a lot, but I was a lot like my higher levels, I was a linesman. So putting me in a blue line is not a good idea because I'm calling everything offsides or I'm calling it good or that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Or
I
like
would say
5
like
feet off. No, is 10
right
feet
or
outside?
no 4. I think it was 6.
4 feet.
That was 6
Okay.
feet. 4 no 4 feet. No, it was
It was 4
6, and
feet.
then he corrected me that it was 4.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Yeah, it was 6, and he said no, it was 4.
Not
I'm
a
like, okay, well,
specific
it was still
story.
offside.
Inside story. Sorry, guys.
But honestly, the thing that makes me the most upset with watching officials is really it's like I love watching young officials because they to what we were talking about earlier, like they're gonna make mistakes, but your players are making mistakes. Like they're working that level because everybody at that level is making mistakes. Like everybody's learning, right? Like you can't learn without doing, right? So like the younger officials are always making mistakes, but if they're working younger games, like it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Coaches calm the hell down, that kind of a thing. But the thing that really gets my goat is when there's a guy or a gal on the ice that you know that they know what they're doing and they just suck. It's like you're 30 years old. I can tell you know what you're doing. You know you're in the right position and you just can't make the right call. Like that's the most frustrating thing. Like, dude, you fucking suck.
Do you think that comes to like game management? Sometimes you talked about like a hungover game. Do you think sometimes it's like, geez, I want to go home and watch a football game. Let's speed this up. Or
yeah, but it's not really that. Like actually, I think it's like those are actually the funner, like the funner, more fun games to kind of watch, right? Like if the ref knows what they're doing, like so in those games, you're like, hey, there's no reason for this game to continue on any longer, right? So like I always use the example of, okay, is it a 6-goal game or is it a 5-goal game, right? So like if it's a game that's not close, right, and it's a 5-goal game, it's not running time. But if it's a 6-goal game, it is running time, right?
yeah,
And so if it's a 5-goal game and it's not running time, we're waving off icings all over the place,
Sure.
right? Because there's no reason for us to keep this thing going. Like it's not going to get closer. Like let's just get this thing done with. But if it's a 6-goal game and it's running time, now I'm calling all of those icing, right? Because when the puck's not in play, nothing else can happen.
Yeah.
Right. So the more that the clock's just running without the puck being in play, no stupid shit can happen. So like those are the things where you actually like, I think as someone watching a game, you really start to know, does a ref have an idea what the hell they're doing or not?
Interesting.
Well,
I hadn't thought about that.
That leads to a good question. And you hear it from, the uninformed parents, and I'll consider myself one as well, but the refs controlling the game so kids don't get hurt. Can you talk to any of that?
So I think, so again, I think this goes back to what USA Hockey's trying to do, right? Like they're trying to take some of that out of the referee's hands, right? But like, I do think that the referee definitely still can play a role into how a game goes, right? And it starts from the beginning. Like it starts from the drop of the puck, right? If you let something stupid go right away, it's really hard to reel that back in. But if you call something stupid that happens right away, it can stop it right away. Like it can end it right there, right? So like I use the example of, so when I went to Michigan for regional camp, like I said, we worked half games. And so my half game, the first game that I worked was the second half of the game. And we were, getting ready and whatever, but we were also watching the game. So we had an idea of what was going on with the game. And so this game that I worked ultimately came into halfway through. It was getting kind of shitty. It was kind of being gong showy, right? Like the kids were fucking all over the place and doing all the stuff. And I walked on the ice after the intermission, and now it was my game, right? The other ref was gone. Now I'm the one that's reffing the game. And there was a check about, I don't know, 15 seconds in that was a bad boarding call that, frankly, the other ref wasn't calling. And it was right in front of me. And my arm shoots in the air, and I give the guy 5 right out of the gate. Like, and back then, boarding, you could give just 5 and not kick the guy out. So I gave him 5 right away. And the whole rest of the game was done. Like everything calmed down, all the shit stopped, all that kind of thing, right? Like, so there is a point where that actually is like a real thing.
Yeah. Just to follow that up, one of the things we want to talk about today, and added benefit of having you here, is the Morgan Riley hit on Ridley Gregg there. Can you give us your take?
So was that cross check to like the chin? See that right?
The cross check after the clap bomb into the empty net.
Oh, yeah. So I saw that. Was that last night? I think I just saw that, right?
Few nights ago. So he's offered the in-person hearing, I think, which is automatic 5 games. NHLPA's appealed that on his behalf, and so it's taken up all of Canadian Twitter. So you can talk about that. Then, if you'd like to say something mean about Canada, we'd appreciate that too.
I'm supposed to say something mean about Canada?
Well, usually we encourage people to do so, but it's that's up to you.
So I saw the hit, and the guy got a 5-game suspension, right? Like, so yeah. What I saw, and like, where was I last night? I was sitting somewhere where I couldn't hear anything, but I was just kind of like reading the bottom scroll. Like, he got a 5-game suspension, right?
Yes, and now that's been appealed.
And so the question that they were all asking was, is 5 games enough, or was that too much, or whatever? Like, I saw it, and it was after the thing, right? Like, so NHL is what, 82 games?
82, yeah.
So 5 games is what is that? 5% approximately?
About, yeah.
Like,
and then, forfeits the salary to a man. But yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. So like the argument was like, oh, the Ottawa guy kind of broke the code. Toronto guy was too whatever. You know what I mean? So
the hard thing is, right, you're trying to distinguish intent, right? Did he intend to cross-check him in the chin? Or was it, I was actually trying to cross-check him in the shoulder and he moved or whatever, right? Like, it's so, like, that intent thing is hard to distinguish, which is why a lot of that stuff, right, ultimately goes to somebody that's not the referee on the ice.
Yeah.
So I saw it, like, was it vicious and was it bad? Yes. Did it deserve more than a 5-game suspension? I'm actually probably okay with the 5-game suspension, but I mean, that's just me. Like, I think a lot of that stuff gets figured out on the ice.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, they'll see each other again, obviously, right? So sort it out.
Well,
but it's interesting to hear some of the different takes on it. It's all over the map.
Well, and I think if you look at that, right, like, it's so between that and, like, if you go back, we wouldn't be going back 20 years, that Bertuzzi hit, right?
Yeah.
When he was playing for Vancouver, and it was against the Avalanche, I think, if I remember right.
Steve Moore, yeah.
Like that thing is like, you're suspended for like seasons. And I think he ultimately was, right? Like, he might even get charged.
Season, if I remember right, and then criminal charges, and because Moore never did it, right? So
because like that, like his intent there, like you could see the intent. He skated halfway down the ice to just like to grab the guy from behind and freaking like you can see the intent right out of the gate, right? Yeah. So like I think the other one that I saw in the last week or so, and I'm not gonna remember who the players were, and I think the guy that got hit was a Penguins guy. I think his number was 55. And like it was right like by the penalty box, and he kind of had his chin out, and some guy came by and like smoked him, like hit him really hard, and like right in the chin, and like fucking knocked him out and whatever. But like what I heard on that one, on whatever thing I was watching, was like there's a reason why you're taught to keep your chin in. Like if you're going to expose yourself in that way, you're kind of giving your opponent an opportunity that you shouldn't even give them, especially at that level, right?
Yeah. So we'll tie this into just a little bit of legal stuff too, but like, do you give a little bit of credence to like a guy put him in a tough spot versus, or like
100%. So I do think so. Some of the stuff in today's hockey, right, that was not called back then, right? So like Scott Stevens is the perfect example. That guy fucking killed people,
right. He was
right?
trying to.
But it was also legal, right? Like at the time, that was legal. Like he wouldn't play more than 2 seasons today because he would be suspended for a season and a half every year, right? But they've changed how the game is called and how the game is played. And so you have to adapt, right? Like, and Scott Stevens probably would have eventually adapted, but like you put a guy in a bad spot, there's only so much that you can lay that on the defensive player, right? Like I'm going there to hit this guy, and now you put him in a bad spot, and so now I hit him in a way that makes it even worse. Like there's only so much of that that's actually my fault.
Yeah, that was a weird hit because it was kind of hard to tell whose fault it was,
Right.
It really, I saw the replay of it, and it does leave open the question, like, well, whose fault was it? Like it, and like you said, intention comes in, and that kind of makes it more complicated.
See, and I think, and on that one, right, like, I think, so and this is why I think it's good that they take that out of the referee's hands and it goes into the league's hands and the whatever, and watch the replay 47 times and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, as a referee, you're on the ice, you're seeing it right now, right? Like, you're just reacting, right? And so, like, let that go to somebody else. But again, like, if it's close enough where there's a question of, was there actually intent there, or did the guy put himself in a bad position? Like, that has to a certain extent go on to the defensive player, right? Like, and it's even that way right now in college hockey, right? Like it has been for years, is that like we're told as referees, you call if it's a potential, like, so now we're going to get into semantics of a game misconduct versus a game disqualification, and now there's different rule books and all that kind of stuff, and what does one mean versus the other. But like in college hockey, like we're told to call a game misconduct, which means in college you're just done for that game, and then subsequently the league will review it and they'll kick them out longer. So the only time that we're ever told to give a guy a DQ on the spot is if we are 1,000% positive that that's the right penalty. Because they can't go backwards, right? Like the problem is they can't go backwards, but they can go forwards.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're coming up on our time here, and I think the appropriate steps would be to have you back probably a few times, maybe with Corey's neighbor, so you guys can rehash some old negotiations.
Bring Matt Moreland in too. We could really, we could make it interesting.
He said he'll only appear with Victor Tikhonov now.
That's true.
Oh,
yeah. Our
Kelly,
former guest Josh are starting to pick who they will or will not talk to. But yeah, so in the waning moments, is there anything mean you want to say about Minot or Canadian fans? You can do the whole country if you want. Or
well, so here's the deal with Minot. So we don't love Minot.
Right.
Minot's got problems.
Yeah.
Right. But I will say, whoever their goalie was 2 years ago is a phenomenal human being. Him and I had a very good conversation while I was standing in the upper deck and he was right below us. And the best comment that he made was, they were down 6 rip, and he goes, it would be way worse if I wasn't in net. And I agreed with him. Like, he was legit. He was honest.
Yeah. Mad guy. I bet they have good ref groupies though. I'm just guessing.
So here's the thing about reffing and Minot.
Okay.
If that's where we're gonna go here. So Mike Schmidt, good guy, Minot guy, right? Has been a coordinator and an evaluator for referees for a long time in the WCHA and now in the NCHA. And Thor Nelson, who was a linesman in the NHL for a long time, who was actually one of my instructors out in New York. Good guys, but man, Minet's got some reffing issues. I don't know what the hell the problem is out there.
It's just call the game from the bench. They just yell at the guys.
Correct.
Yeah,
And if you try to call the game from the stands, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Not that that's ever happened.
I may or may not know that from experience.
Okay.
Or if you stand in front of the warm room glass and try to call the game, like you know that. Not that that's ever happened.
You might have them knocking on the glass for a significant amount of time, and we just kind of go,
we're not going to move. We're the guys with the headphones.
Right. How about you come out to where it's colder and you can see the game?
Yeah. Hey,
But I will say the best thing about Canada is Saskatchewan.
Oh,
boo.
Yep.
Total boo,
See?
Josh.
I listened earlier. I just won whatever bet Corey and I did not have, but I just won.
100% boo. I'll buy you a Coors Light. I hate you.
it was literally going to be the next question. I was going to ask how to pronounce the name of the province between Manitoba and Alberta, and you anticipated it like a good rep, like a good official.
Well, the best thing is if I wouldn't have listened earlier, I actually wouldn't have even had any idea what fucking province that was. So, and I probably would have called it a state.
It's fine too. I mean, nobody cares, right?
There was an interview. I can't remember. It was a man. I know it was a Mankato player, and Mankato gets a lot of their guys from Canada. I think they still do.
Yeah.
And there was an after game interview, and the reporter person asked him a question about some other Wisconsin or some other state in America, and the guy he referenced the state as a province, and it's like 100% a Canadian.
Oh yeah.
Yep. That's a no. Americans don't like that.
No. You know what? You covered that in grade 6. You should know better. Random Canadian.
Kyle, your Canadian is showing 6th grade.
So close.
Yeah, it's okay. We get there.
So close. Corey, you want to take it on home for us?
Yeah, I will. So I promised a review of Yup Light. I will tell you, Yup Light tastes like Bush Light slept with its cousin in Minot. You can draw your own conclusions.
Okay, yeah, I'm behind it so far.
And Kyle, you are definitely behind it. Second thing on my list tonight to close her out, just so you don't know, for those at home, we are now the 154th rated hockey podcast on Apple. So
how many hockey
cheers,
podcasts are on?
Yeah, like 154 out of how many, Corey?
That's not important.
Probably 155.
We don't want to know, right?
Yeah, but that 155th one sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, tough not to. So, okay, well, Josh, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate that. Another 90 minutes of really pretty good content.
Love it.
Yeah.
I had fun. It was great.
Good. I appreciate you joining us, and we'll have it out tomorrow. And good night, everyone.
All right. Good night. Thanks, Josh.
See you guys. Thanks, guys.